Dubai was supposed to be untouchable. Then the sirens went off and nobody knew where to hide. At 2:15 in the morning on February 28, 2026, the first wave of United States stealth bombers and Israeli fighter jets crossed into Iranian airspace. Within 3 hours, more than 30 sites were hit, including the Supreme Leader's Office, the Ministry of Defense, Iran's parliament, and the Natanz nuclear facility. Cruise missiles and precision-guided bombs cratered government buildings in Tehran, while a parallel cyber assault shut down command networks tied to Iran's missile program. The Pentagon and the Israeli Defense Ministry each released statements describing the operation as a necessary act of self-defense, invoking Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. Washington's language centered on the threat of Iranian missiles and nuclear escalation, and Israel cited intercepted communications and the need to preempt an existential attack. Tehran's reply was immediate. The Iranian Foreign Ministry denounced the strikes as a flagrant violation of sovereignty and declared that Iran now held the right to respond under Article 51. As dawn broke, the Supreme National Security Council convened in Tehran. A public address by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps warned that any state hosting United States military assets would be considered a party to aggression. Iran's ambassador delivered a formal letter to the United Nations Security Council, asserting that the United States and Israeli operation constituted an armed attack, and that Iran's response would be a proportionate exercise of collective self-defense. The letter cited ongoing Security Council paralysis and referenced previous attacks against Iranian officials and infrastructure over the past 18 months. Inside the Security Council chamber, debate stalled. Russia and China condemned the United States and Israel for breaching international law, while the United States and France defended the strikes as preventive and proportionate. No resolution passed. The Secretary General issued a statement urging restraint, but acknowledged the legal standoff. Meanwhile, back-channel mediation efforts began in Geneva and Doha, with Omani and Chinese diplomats seeking to prevent further escalation. In Tehran, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps leadership moved quickly. Brigadier General Hassan Rashidi, recently promoted to oversee external operations, was tasked with preparing a rapid and visible response. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps televised statement described the coming action as a decisive act of self-defense to crush the aggressor's capacity to threaten Iranian lives. The language was deliberate, Article 51, collective self-defense, and proportionality, each chosen to anchor Iran's next move within the legal framework of the United Nations Charter, even as international opinion remained deeply divided. By midday, the region was on alert. United States bases in the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan and Iraq were placed on the highest defensive posture. Gulf governments received private warnings from Iranian diplomats that continued hosting of American forces would make their territory a target. In Dubai, sirens sounded again, but the city's civil defense network was unprepared for the scale of what was coming. The legal arguments had been made. The escalation doctrine was now in motion. Iran's retaliation after the US and Israeli strikes was not a single outburst, but the latest move in a carefully staged campaign called True Promise. This doctrine, shaped over nearly 2 years, unfolded in 4 distinct phases, each triggered by a specific event and each marking a clear step in operational complexity. True Promise. One began in April 2024 when Iran launched about 300 drones at Israeli targets, responding to the attack on its consulate in Damascus. 6 months later, in October 2024, True Promise 2 escalated matters. Roughly 200 ballistic missiles targeted Israel after the assassinations of Hezbollah's Hassan Nasrallah and Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. Every strike was publicly claimed by IRGC, justified with references to Article 51 of the UN Charter and framed as self-defense. By June 2025, the campaign shifted again. True Promise. 3 introduced electronic warfare and cyber attacks during the Midnight Hammer confrontation, focusing on Israeli military networks and surveillance systems. This phase marked Iran's growing ability to blend digital and kinetic warfare, drawing attention from Gulf states and international observers who warned of the risks of further escalation. The doctrine reached a turning point with True Promise 4 on February 28, 2026. For the first time, Iran struck multiple Gulf states in a single, synchronized operation. The targets included Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates, Al Udeid in Qatar, the US 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, and US installations in Kuwait, Jordan, and Iraq. The targets were chosen for their direct support of American military power. The attack combined ballistic and cruise missiles, loitering drones, and cyber intrusion packages, all executed within 3 hours. IRGC's statement declared, "All US assets in the region are legitimate targets. Arab governments are not the intended victims." Hours before the strikes, Brigadier General Hassan Rashidi was appointed overall campaign commander by Iran's Supreme National Security Council. Known for his role in the 2019 Saudi oil facility attack, Rashidi was tasked with synchronizing missile and drone barrages, integrating intelligence from Hezbollah and Houthi advisors, and ensuring the operation's timing amplified both military and strategic effects. Internal memos reveal that the decision to escalate to a multi-state operation followed intense debate, with hardliners ultimately prevailing. From True Promise 1 through 4, Iran's doctrine evolved from limited drone strikes to a coordinated multi-theater campaign. Each phase answered a specific provocation. Rashidi's appointment brought new operational discipline as Iran sought to punish adversaries, deter further attacks, and warn Gulf states of the risks of hosting US forces. Iran's targeting in True Promise 4 followed a specific operational logic. Every state hosting significant US military assets became a target. Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates, Al Udeid in Qatar, and the US 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain were all hit within a 3-hour window. US installations in Kuwait, Jordan, and Iraq also came under fire. Each of these bases plays a critical role in American force projection. Al Dhafra supports F-35 and drone operations. Al Udeid serves as the main hub for CENTCOM's air campaigns, while the 5th Fleet in Bahrain coordinates naval security across the Gulf. IRGC public statements made clear the rationale. Any territory enabling US strikes on Iran would be considered a party to aggression and would face direct consequences. Oman, despite its proximity and strategic location, was spared, reflecting its ongoing role as a mediator and its refusal to host American combat forces. The selection of targets sent a calculated message to Gulf capitals. Alignment with US military operations now carried immediate risk, while neutrality or mediation could offer protection. By drawing this line, Iran sought to fracture the regional consensus around the American security umbrella and to force a reckoning among Gulf leaders about the costs of continued cooperation with Washington. Smoke drifted over Dubai's skyline before sunrise, casting an unnatural haze across the city's towers. Within minutes of the first explosions, Dubai International Airport and Al Maktoum International shut down all operations, grounding hundreds of flights and stranding travelers in terminal corridors. Emergency alerts blared on phones, but many residents reported the warnings arrived seconds after the initial blasts. The Emirates alert system, designed to cover nearly everyone in the city, struggled with network congestion as calls for help surged. In the rush for safety, families found no designated bomb shelters, just hotel basements, parking garages, and improvised safe zones in malls and mosques. A civil defense official, speaking anonymously, admitted that their shelter coverage was never meant for mass casualty missile strikes, and that they had to improvise. By midday, casualty figures began to diverge. The UAE's official toll listed 27 dead, but hospital records and independent monitors suggested the real number was closer to 45, with dozens more injured by falling glass and debris. In Abu Dhabi, one person died from missile fragments on the city's outskirts, and emergency services received more than 1,200 calls in the first hour alone. The absence of public shelters and the lag in alerts left many residents exposed, fueling a sense of chaos and vulnerability that rippled through both cities. As smoke lingered and sirens faded, the reality set in. The promise of safety that defined Dubai and Abu Dhabi had vanished overnight. Oil tankers diverted from the Strait of Hormuz as insurance premiums for Gulf shipping soared overnight. Spot rates for Arabian Light crude jumped 7%, and Brent crude touched $86 a barrel, driven by fears of further disruption. On the trading floor, the Dubai financial market opened down 3.2%, erasing billions in value within hours. Airlines scrambled to reroute flights, with Emirates alone reporting an estimated $1.2 billion in lost revenue as Dubai International remained shuttered. Cargo backlogs grew, and aviation analysts traced a 12% drop in Gulf-wide passenger loads for the first 2 weeks of March. The economic shock rippled outward. Construction and tourism shares fell, sovereign wealth funds shifted billions into safer assets, and war risk premiums for vessels transiting the Gulf more than doubled. Meanwhile, inside Tehran, the Supreme National Security Council convened behind closed doors. Leaked minutes later revealed a bitter debate. Hardliners argued only a broad, visible strike would restore deterrence after the US and Israeli raids. The final vote broke in their favour, setting the course for the multi-state barrage that followed. The Council's decision and the economic fallout that swept through the Gulf underscored how quickly a missile exchange could upend both domestic politics and the global market's sense of security. Tonight, Dubai's vulnerability is no longer theory, it is precedent. As Iran signals that Gulf prosperity rests on foreign military ties, every skyline in the region stands exposed. The calculus of deterrence has changed. How governments adapt now will shape not just markets, but millions of civilian lives. Share your perspective below.